Thank you very much, Gene. And we're going to go to our next speaker, who is Harry Moser. Harry founded the Reshoring Initiative to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. after working for high-end machine tool supplier GF Agi Sharmil, starting as president in 1985 and retiring on 12/31/2010 as chairman emeritus. Largely due to the success of the Reshoring Initiative, Harry was inducted into the Industry Week Manufacturing Hall of Fame in 2010 and was named Quality Magazine's 2012 Quality Professional of the Year. Harry participated actively in President Obama's 2012 Insourcing Forum at the White House, won the Economist debate on outsourcing and offshoring, and received the Manufacturing Leadership Council's Industry Advocacy Award in 2014. Harry is frequently quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, New Yorker, and USA Today. He received a BS in Mechanical Engineering and an MS in Engineering at MIT in 1967 and an MBA from the University of Chicago in 1981. Harry Moser.
That was a tough act to follow there, but I'll do my best. For us to succeed with our mission that we had up there before to help the president, we have to make sure that the president understands that manufacturing, the strengthening of manufacturing, is feasible and can be achieved, and that we can make that happen. In the face of a very high US dollar and low oil prices, the continued success of reshoring and foreign direct investment show that with the right policies, with the elimination of the tilted playing field, our goal is actually achievable, and therefore it's worth the attention and the effort of the next president to make those things happen. All right, we should be saying, there we go. So just a couple of positive things first, some things to show you what's good. FDI, foreign direct investment, is at record levels in 2015. We're #1 in the world. 70% of that FDI is in manufacturing, and that's up from a historical level of 36%. So the world, the foreign companies especially, understand that the US is a good place to manufacture. Our rank in competitiveness, according to Deloitte, we're #2 now. By 2020, we're going to be #1. I don't believe it. If we were that competitive, we wouldn't have a $500 billion a year trade deficit. But at least from their perspective, that's where we are. Reshoring and foreign direct investment, the jobs brought by those two flows, now balance the loss of jobs to offshoring in the last 2 years. So we're doing well in that regard. Some of the reasons why this is happening, the companies are starting to recognize the costs of offshoring, the costs of making something in one place and selling it in another. Generally, it looks as if globalization has peaked, and there's a trend towards localizations, towards making things in the location where they'll be sold. The US is the largest market. It has the largest trade deficit. Therefore, one could argue that we have the most potential for growth with a reversion to the mean concept. This next slide, okay, shows the number of jobs reshored plus FDI in a variety of key industries. And you can see that the ones I've done in red are ones you might not have expected. So electrical equipment and appliances, plastics, rubber, computer products, apparel. Who would have expected a lot of jobs to come back in apparel? Wood products. So a lot of action that we might not have expected, and substantial number of jobs. I skipped over a slide here that shows that trend that I described for 2014, 2015, where we back 10, 15 years ago, we were losing about 240,000 manufacturing jobs a year to offshoring and bringing back only 10 or 15, so net losing 200,000 or more. Whereas by 2014 and 2015, the two flows are roughly in balance. We've gone from losing net over 200,000 a year to roughly break even per year. We still have, say, 4 million net offshore that we still have to bring back. Interestingly, China is the major source of reshoring and FDI. We've had about 60% of the cases, specifically in reshoring, are from China, the China that looked indomitable 10, 15 years ago. Another positive fact about manufacturing, I did a regression analysis across the years from 97 to 2006. So before offshoring really got going, and until just before the Great Recession and the start of significant reshoring. And you take the blue line, you take it down. By 2016, we are now about 2.3 million more manufacturing jobs than that regression line would suggest. So something has changed. The trends that were in place back then have changed, and we'd say that a significant portion of it is that we're no longer losing that net 200,000 manufacturing jobs per year because we're offshoring so much less and we're reshoring and FDIing so much more. But that's the good news. The bad news, it's not happening fast enough. We still have 4 million jobs offshored, measured by the trade deficit. The GDP growth, the manufacturing growth, the productivity growth are all minimal. Investment is down. Machine tool orders this year are down 14, 15% from last year, which wasn't especially a good year to start with. The US dollar is consistently driven too high by the financial flows. We're the safe haven. People move hundreds of billions of dollars into the United States. The dollar goes up. Great place to be a bank, horrible place to be a manufacturer, relatively. Our skilled and even unskilled workforce is in short supply. I spoke in Monterrey, Mexico last week, and the Mexicans were confident that they were going to export a lot more to us because we can't find the skilled workers, and we can't even find the unskilled workers to work in our factories, where the Mexicans are delighted to have that kind of a job. And at the same time that we can't find the workers, there's all the worry about the robots and offshoring replacing the workers that we do have. So there are some significant negatives at the same time. The best way to get out of this is reshoring and foreign direct investment. And the question is, how do you make all that happen? At a fixed level of consumption, so if you end consumption, the only way to grow manufacturing is to export more or import less. Everything else, if GM just makes some more cars and the total here and the total consumption of cars stays the same, those additional production here are replacing imports that would have otherwise come in. So I'm quite sure the statement is true. Importing less, which is reshoring and FDI, is much easier than exporting more. If you take the table that I put up there, and if you have a product that's made in the US, sold in the US for 100, and there's another product made in China and sold here for $100, so they're just about price competitive, everybody's getting a share of it. If you take that same US product and you sell it in China, you better be selling it for 115, because then you have duty, freight, packaging, carrying cost of inventory, additional language, legal issues, all kinds of stuff going on. And the one that the Chinese sell here for 100, they can sell in China for 85, because they then don't have the duty, freight, packaging, all this other stuff going on. So where we're price competitive here, we're 30% too high there. So is it easier to compete with them here or easier to compete with them there? It's easier to compete here. Okay, so our solution, balance the $500 billion per year trade deficit, brings back 4 million jobs. It cuts the US budget deficit roughly in half. That'd be a wonderful thing to happen. Nobody's talking about it. Strengthens the middle class. It would increase manufacturing by 25 to 30%. Can you imagine a 25 to 30% increase in US manufacturing? If you spread it out over 20 years, like a ramp up, it would require about 25% more capital investment per year than would otherwise be the case to develop the capability, the capacity to meet that demand. It would strengthen recruitment. It would allow both productivity increases and growth in manufacturing employment, which would be a wonderful combination to have by drawing down that trade deficit. So here's a virtuous cycle. As we do more reshoring, or FDI, we get higher capacity utilization, which causes more investment, which increases productivity because you're investing in the newest, most recent machines, increases competitiveness, and you get more reshoring. Then you go around the cycle again. In the same sense with the skilled workforce, as you get more reshoring, the workforce, the student, the the guidance counselor says, wow, the jobs are coming back from offshore. It's safe for Susie to become a welder, become a Bill to become a tool maker. So you get more recruitment, you get more and you get smarter kids, you get better programs to train them, like has been repeatedly discussed. You get a more skilled workforce, which increases productivity, which increases competitiveness, which gives you more reshoring, and the cycle continues. So the Reshoring Initiative, my group, has a online free software that companies use to calculate which products to come back. It helps them, instead of making the decision just based on price, it helps them include duty, freight, packaging, carrying cost of inventory, travel cost, intellectual property risk, the impact on innovation when you bring engineering and manufacturing back together, the Pisano and Xi effect, the orders that you no longer lose because you can respond quickly, all the made in USA value, all that kind of thing. So I took the US versus China cases, and in 5% of those cases that the users had analyzed, the US had the lowest price, but in 53% of the cases, we had the lowest total cost. Difference is 48%. I try to be conservative about it, so we say that roughly just getting the companies to do the math properly would bring back something on the order of 25% of what the companies have now offshored. As an example of that, Mori Corp, it's about $100 million a year printed circuit board maker outside of Chicago, make big circuit boards, go into Caterpillar, Deere, things like that. They came to me, the vice president of sales came to me a year ago. He said, Harry, we're about to lose a $25 million order to a lower priced Chinese competitor. He and I did the total cost of ownership calculation. He took the results in to show to the customer. He saved the order largely based on having gotten the customer to look at all the costs that should have been considered in the first place. Where the total cost of ownership estimator looks at the impact on the firm's P&L, we're now trying to get started on a corporate social responsibility estimator that would help the company say, if I reshore that work, let's say I reshore it, and for us, for a TCO viewpoint, it's about break even, it's probably not worth doing, but when we bring that back, we're going to have 20 more employees, our suppliers are going to have 50 more, all those people will pay taxes, there's going to be less safety net expenditures by the government, so the government's P&L will get better by some amount. And since the electricity production here is much cleaner than in China, and our factories are less polluting, and you don't have to drag the stuff halfway across the world environment will be enhanced substantially. So we believe by making that tool eventually available, that will give companies who might be marginal on the P&L aspect to say, yeah, I'm going to do that because now I can brag about the benefit I'm bringing to the world. So anybody who's interested in that, we'd love to hear from you. The US and foreign companies will locate work to the most competitive locations. You know, we can talk about all kinds of reasons, all kinds of things that should be done, but basically the companies are realistically going to go where they'll be most competitive and most profitable. So it is essential to make the US competitive, especially for sales in the US. And to be able to decide what to do about manufacturing, I believe the next president needs to understand how competitive we are now in key industries, and what combination of actions will close the gap that exists. So here's an example. This is a index unit labor cost. And I used to put this up all the time because about 2 or 3 years ago, it looked great because the US was flat and all the other companies were going up, and we were picking up all kinds of advantages. And the one that's way up at the top is China. The others are Germany, Brazil, Mexico. But now with the US dollar having risen so much the last 2 or 3 years, you can see how their curves are coming back down towards ours. So we're losing a lot of that advantage that we had, and companies know that, and they are less likely to make the decision to bring the work to the United States. So what I believe we need to do to help the next president is to come up with a model, you know, something like what I've described here, to list the factors that could be changed, and to say what the competitiveness impact would be of each of those factors. So, for example, get the dollar down by 30%. We've heard numbers similar to that discussed, and I call that the Japan, China, Korea, German model. And if you did that, we'd pick up 10 to 15% on dollar competitiveness. Get the skilled workforce up to the German and Switzerland level. I think that's at least worth at least 5%. Corporate tax reform, something like Ireland, probably worth 2% on price, something like that. Have a value-added tax, 15% maybe, the charge on the foreign product when it comes into the United States. Focus on reshoring. UK has a government office just focused on reshoring. Other countries are doing it. It's got to be worth something. Add anything else you want into here, regulation, et cetera. And I'd recommend getting the best of us together that are interested in that and filling this out and then making that available to the president so he can make actual solid decisions based on the best available information and pick the models. It might not be all one, but it might be a half of one, a third of another, and a quarter of the other, and put together, let's say, a 15% analysis. So the way to proceed with that, from our user database, from people having analyzed competitiveness for total cost, US versus a range of other countries, that we have XWorks product price comparisons, user calculated hidden costs, all these other things that I described, quality, delivery, intellectual property, et cetera, by source country, especially China, and by industry. So we could understand what that competitiveness is now, calculate what the gap is, and then estimate the mix of actions that would be required in each industry for each country to make the US competitive enough to eliminate the trade deficit. So I think that would be a wonderful, actual, real action plan that we could proceed with. Love to have anybody that's interested come and see me and talk about it. So we're a not-for-profit. We've got 24 sponsors. IMTS is going on right now, 120,000 people buying machine tools and things like that, and 16 of them are there. You can see their logos on that. And we think of ourselves as the reshoring initiative, as the little Dutch boy holding back the flood of offshoring. And look forward to your help. Anybody else who wants to work with us, we'd be delighted. Thank you, Gil.
Can we take one or two questions? Or?
I'm delighted. Yep.
Any questions for Harry?
Yeah, Harry, thanks for doing this. Michael Maybach. Can you tell us a little more detail? We now have a 35% corporate income tax. We don't have a VAT. We have both of those up there. Where would you take the corporate income tax? Would you make it territorial? And what rate would you do the VAT?
You should read our tax paper in your red folder, by the way, but Harry can answer that too.
My solution, I'd probably go to a 15% value-added tax, and I'd eliminate, as was suggested in the discussion over there, probably eliminate some of the state and local sales taxes so you don't double up on them. And I'd probably eliminate Social Security and Medicare taxes or minimize them and fund it out of that VAT so that the average worker wouldn't see their net income dramatically impacted. Their standard of living wouldn't be changed too much. So that was the value-added tax. Corporate tax, I think we should be the average of the major industrialized countries. Probably can't get to Ireland, but 20% and get rid of all the special deals, all the special exemptions, and even the ones that all of us love, like the R&D tax credit, et cetera. I'd throw all those in to get the tax rate down to the lowest possible number. Obviously, we should only be taxing what happens here. But the problem, though, is if you only tax what happens here and the companies can still find ways to take the income they've made here and make believe that it was happening somewhere else, then that doesn't work. So you have to have a tough enough box to keep the income they really make here. They can't be shifting the intellectual property to the Cayman Islands and making believe that the income was generated there. Yeah?
I have one question, and then we're going to have to move on. But do you think it's possible to bring consumer electronics back? There was a plan that Foxconn had to put up a big plant in Harrisburg. I don't know what happened with that. Maybe Harrisburg did go bankrupt, so maybe that had something to do with it. But it seems to me it ought to be possible to put up a major plant of a company like Foxconn's in the United States and bring some of that consumer manufacturing back.
We have a number of cases of success. Apple has brought the Mac Pro back and is producing it here. Lenovo is doing a good job of producing laptops and others. They sell to the New York school system, for example. They've done well. Motorola failed. They took over a factory in Texas, and it didn't work, mainly because the product didn't sell. So there's been successes and there's been failures, but it's if we don't try, it won't happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.